it was this negotiation that I had to do with my parents. And I remember them saying, like, you have 12 months to figure it out.
No way.
Like, as soon as you graduate, like, you can give it a year.
Yeah.
But any longer, you'll have to go back to finding another job.
Wow.
And so now I had this timeline to figure out how to make this business work, how to raise money, find my co-founders, like build the whole thing. And I took the deal, but the 12 months were wild.
Welcome to Season 2 of Behind the Business. I'm your host, Fahim Savja. Every episode, we go beyond the business plans and discover the real life and untold stories of today's entrepreneurs. It's time for the people behind the business. Let's get into it. Hey there, just a quick note before we dive in. Alongside Behind the Business, I run a small consulting practice called Savja Advisory. We work with fintechs, founders, and financial institutions. Whether it's product strategy, partnerships, or business transitions, we're in the business of helping small businesses and those who serve them succeed. If that's you, check us out at savjaholdings.com/advisory. All right, back to your episode. Nuha, thank you so much for joining me on Behind the Business. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to jump right into it because I, as mentioned, have followed your story for a really long time. And I'm so curious to hear about, the beginning days of Earthos. So tell us what Earthos does, your initial first start into Earthos, and what that journey was like for you in the beginning.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So Earthos is a sustainable materials company, and we design alternatives for plastic. So everyday plastics like packaging, shampoo bottles, toothbrushes.
Nice.
And we actually look at reimagining the building blocks of those materials. So looking at bio-based sources to replace them. And it didn't start out as this platform technology. It actually started out as a packing peanut company called Eco Packers.
Okay.
And it started with research around starch and potato byproducts. So that was kind of the early days of it. And my co-founders and I just became obsessed with potatoes and with starch. And the science around how you can convert these bio-based ingredients into plastic-like materials.
Cool.
So the journey has been really interesting, so rewarding, but it has been this evolution from those early kind of packing peanut days to now actually working with some of the world's largest brands and helping them transition their plastics over to more sustainable products.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's been really nice to see that journey, again, from afar. But I'm going to ask you a few questions about the business. And again, the entire purpose behind this podcast is really for people to see you and your founder story behind what the work that you've done to found Earthos is. Because I feel like there's a lot of folks who may have an idea, may have something they want to enjoy doing outside of their day job that, may need some push, may need some motivation, and hearing from people like you could help that process. So first things first, what's a packing peanut?
So you typically see them as this styrofoam packing peanuts, like they're little styrofoam packaging that goes into a lot of shipping containers.
Right.
So we made our own version that was fully non-toxic, made of plant materials, and then you could also eat them. But that was just the fun trick.
Were they tasty?
Honestly, they tasted like popcorn.
Oh, not bad. Yeah. Okay.
I know. A few of our early investors actually also asked us if we could flavor them at the time.
So funny.
We decided not to for legal reasons.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
And why this? Like, what was it about a plastics alternative that got you excited about starting this business?
So when we started, it was actually 2016. That was the year. And that was when I think there was this wave of reports that came out around the health of our oceans and the plastic crisis. And at the time, I was a business student, so I was studying accounting. I had nothing to do with packaging, plastics, science. But it just struck me that, we think that there's so much happening around the world. We think that we've made so much progress towards cleaning up our oceans. And then when you see these stats around the fact that by 2050, there would be more plastic than fish in our oceans, 2050 is not that far away. That is our generation that we will actually witness. And so I think at the time, I was just so curious about why we hadn't solved this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a student club called Enactus at U of T.
Yep.
And the whole concept of Enactus is using business as a force for good and finding ways to really create the most impactful products and solutions to tackle some of the world's biggest issues.
Right.
So it ended up being something we were just so curious about, wanted to research this problem.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2016, there was also a big issue around food waste in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't really know how these two problems would come together, but it almost was timing. It was actually being able to just see these two problems in isolation and then coming together to see, could we solve for two big problems with this one idea, which was eco-packers.
That's amazing.
So it was really just this research project, being curious, that turned into my entire life.
Wow. Yeah. Exactly. Because you didn't take the conventional path of after graduation looking for some form of work, right? Did you go directly into the work at Earthos?
Yes, I did.
Wow.
So I started when I was 20.
Wow.
And I was juggling my accounting degree
Yeah.
with building this business, which was quite insane. And then decided to actually not take on my full-time job. So I had a job offer lined up. It was, the path that was laid out for me, which was to work at EY and do that.
Yeah.
And I decided to not move forward with that and ended up just building out Earthos full-time.
What was that decision like? Because I know it probably was very difficult, but also very difficult to explain to maybe family, friends about why you're not choosing to go down the path that most do.
It was crazy. I still remember kind of the moment I told my parents that this was what I was going to do. And I think honestly it was probably my first experience having like a high stake negotiation with my family. And it's hard because I come from like a pretty traditional immigrant family, and the path for accounting was set out for me because my entire family is accountants, like my siblings, my dad, like everybody. And so my parents worked really hard to find stability and like most immigrant families, give their kids more than they had. And so to tell them that I was consciously choosing not to take a stable job with a paycheck and instead try to build out this very high risk business was really difficult. Now my parents have come around, of course. But it was this negotiation that I had to do with my parents, and I remember them saying like, you have 12 months to figure it out.
No way.
Like as soon as you graduate, like you can give it a year, but any longer you'll have to go back to finding another job.
Wow.
And so now I had this timeline to figure out how to make this business work, how to raise money, find my co-founders, like build the whole thing. And I took the deal, but the 12 months were wild.
Yeah. What was the initial reaction of your parents after you had passed that 12-month point where you were like, okay, I did it? Was there that moment with them that you were like, guys, I'm going down the right path here?
Yeah, I mean, I think like month 10, I still hadn't raised any money. So it was like month 10, I was cutting it close.
Yeah.
And then finally, when we raised our first round, I could see that my parents had just changed their perspective. And I think they definitely saw that this could be a path. And yes, it's still risky. Like obviously early stage companies and building a tech company is really risky. But I think they finally realized that it is all about timing. And if I didn't pursue this now, it wouldn't necessarily be an opportunity I could pursue 10 years from now,
Of course.
And then I gave them their next like wave of shock when I told them I'm moving to Asia.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But I feel like now they just expect to just be surprised by me, which is fun.
So you had to move to Asia. Like, is that because your investor was there, your manufacturing was there? Why did you have to move?
So at the time, we were trying to find manufacturing partners to test the materials because we had to prove out that it could work and it could scale. And no one in Canada was actually giving us a chance. They were too scared because they were worried that our materials would literally blow up their machines, and the manufacturing ecosystem here in Canada is just very different.
Sure.
And so the only partners that were actually willing to give us a shot were in China and in Hong Kong. And so we said that if we wanted to build this right, and we wanted to build this for the markets that ultimately have such a big impact on the supply chain, we needed to move there. We needed to be next door, side by side, really making sure that we were building with them.
Right.
And so we ended up actually booking one-way tickets after we raised the round, moved, and and then that was kind of the early days of actually building out our pilot.
Yeah. Wow. Did age play a factor in this process? I know, like, raising money when you're younger, raising money at all is difficult. Did your age, like, was that ever a deterrent at all when you were raising money and trying to build something out?
I think it's definitely a factor. I mean, I think I had everything. I was young, I was female. Like, there's so many things that were at play for me.
Yeah.
And I'd say that it just had to, it just forced me to build relationships with investors and credibility and trust with them in a very different way, because I didn't have necessarily a track record, right? And I didn't necessarily have anything to show for. I wasn't necessarily also a specialist in this field.
Right.
And so initially when I tried to raise money, I got so many rejections. Like, there was a lot of no's. And then it was up to me to say, okay, can I turn these no's into yeses? It's okay if it's a no, but I want to know why. I just wanted to get better. I wanted to make sure that I could actually improve on that. And so the investors that ended up giving us a chance were the ones who had initially maybe said no, and then turned their no into a yes after they actually saw how we responded to it and tried to address some of their concerns. So I'd say it was a factor. I like to think that, you know, it was an opportunity, because this is a field or an industry which really does need a lot of change and some new perspective. And that's sort of the viewpoint that we have as a younger team. Yeah. But it's hard, of course. Yeah, of course.
And it's nice to see that you've talked about this openly in the past as well. Like, I know in your Top 30 Under 30 award, with your interview with Forbes, you were pretty upfront about the fact that the manufacturing industry, generally speaking, is pretty male dominated by an older demographic, right? So coming into that, with your age, being a woman and having a younger team must have been challenging, right?
Challenging, yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But you got over that hurdle, right? And it seems like things have been going really well so far. And at some point you had a name change, right, in the business?
Yes, yeah. Well, we turned Eco-Packers into Earthos after we started realizing that there was just so much more to what we were building, and we didn't necessarily just want to be a packing peanut company. Yeah. And by the way, everyone thought that we were like a shipping company because we were like Eco-Packers. Yeah. You can ship our products or something. Right. So we did a rebrand primarily because the vision for the business was just growing, and we wanted to be able to do that. Yeah. And initially I was always, like you were saying, like, I think I was always very conscious of my age initially, and I would do everything I could possibly do to try to hide that, and now I've just learned to embrace it, and it's been such a blessing for us to be a younger team and have that as our advantage. Yeah, it has been really cool, and from the outside in, very, very inspiring, because I do think that a lot of people have a very traditional mindset, even if from the outside in you'd think a progressive way. And when I say traditional, I mean you have to have had X amount of experience in a professional environment, in corporate, but you opted not to do that to build something you were passionate about. And I think that in itself is very inspiring. So my next question for you is, what was scaling like, right? In the beginning, you raised some money, you're in Asia, but scaling, building the right team, what was that process like? Scaling, I mean, we're still scaling, you know, and I think that it's every milestone has its own set of challenges.
Right.
And initially, you know, hiring the right team, and for us scaling in a completely different country where we didn't know the language, we had to set up an entirely new business entity. Like it was jumping right into this. And we learned so much. And I think for us, we've always had this mindset of, we don't know everything, but we're going to do everything we possibly can to find the answers.
Right.
And that's our job. Like, that's my job, is to just ask the right questions and make sure that we're building in the best way we possibly can with the information we have.
Right.
And so we've gone through a lot of ups and downs with our scaling, and many pivots, even after the first pivot, where you know, we initially also thought that we could build out our own massive manufacturing capacity in China. And then COVID hit, and we were in the middle of it all. And so I think
you were there at the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I think we've just learned to try to plan for as much as you can, but when you're scaling and you can have such unpredictable just world events happen that you can't control.
For sure.
It's just how we can respond to it and how we can actually evolve from it.
For sure. And all the while you're building this and going through COVID and scaling, what's it been like at home, like with your group of friends, you know, with people who are like you know, obviously you're on I would assume maybe a completely different track than some people that you know, or who are potentially in your circle or have been. What was that like, you know, when kind of comparing?
It's been hard. I think, you know, like you have to make so many sacrifices when you're doing this. And I knew that as I was going into this, that I would be spending, you know, my 20s building this. Like I've spent 9 years now on this, and it has resulted in, you know, a lot of sacrifices when it comes to your social life and family life and all of that. But I think it's also allowed me to really focus on the relationships that are so important to me and matter, because you honestly don't have a lot of time to have just a lot of it, right? And so the friends and the family who have been there from the beginning, and they've been so supportive, and I'm so grateful for that. Yeah. But it's absolutely chaos in my personal life.
Yeah. This is what I think is really, really important to hone in on. And there are a lot of outlets out there right now that talk about entrepreneurship and that talk about how wonderful it is, and kind of glorified, in my personal opinion. And I'm really happy that you're opening up a little bit more about the realistic sacrifices that you have to make along the way, right? I from the outside in, it's very easy to be like, oh my God, there's so many awards and so many accomplishments and so many great things. But I was so excited to talk to you because I really want to know what it was actually like. You know, what's the day-to-day like? Yeah. So those sacrifices that you make, are you having to be really intentional with those particular relationships, right?
Yeah, exactly. You have to be intentional. You have to also just know how much you can give too. It's so easy to feel like you can do it all, right? And I do believe that you can, but the reality is you can't do it all the time. Yeah. And so you have to kind of pick and choose and be very balanced with it. And I think I'm still trying to figure out what that balance even means for me, you know? And I think when we talk about scaling, like that scaling journey is all consuming, and you can't just take a day off ever. You can't check out of the business, and you have to always be thinking about it, and you also have to be ready to go whenever, you know? And like I was telling you, like sometimes I don't even know where I'm going to be next week, because that's how the scaling journey is. And when you're in growth mode as well. So I'm lucky to have the people in my life who've been there, but I know it's been a lot for them to also handle.
I'm sure. You've told me a little bit of the story once, but I think it was you were closing a funding round close to your wedding?
The day of my wedding.
The day of?
Yes, the day.
Okay, you got to tell me more.
Yes, so it was my seed round, and the day that we were closing was also the day I was getting married. Oh, and it just happened to be that day. Like I don't know how it happened, but when we were deciding on the date with my investors, this was the only day that worked for everybody.
Oh my God.
And so I didn't actually tell them it was my wedding, and they didn't know.
God.
They didn't know until I think a week before, when I said, like, please, can we really try to stick to this date? Because sometimes closing dates change push and whatever.
Yeah.
And I told them, like, can we please just try to make sure it's this date? And they were asking me, why? Like, why? And I was like, well, I'm getting married that day.
Oh, you did tell them?
I told them eventually. And then they said, what? Like, this is wild. And I just said, it's all good. Like, it's all good. I can do this in the morning. And then I'll go to my ceremony and it'll be fine. So I remember I was getting my hair and makeup done, and I was on the phone with my lawyers and making sure everything was good to go that day. I signed the papers, I think 1 hour before I walked down the aisle.
Oh my God. That's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
insane.
I know.
I mean, how did your family react? Like, were they excited, or were they like, dude, you're wild right now?
Yeah, my family thinks I'm absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I think it was the best way to show my husband, like, this is what life with me
this is what you're
like.
getting into. Yeah.
And I think it was great. It was honestly so fun. Then that night I was celebrating two really big things.
Yeah, of
and I remember I actually invited a couple of our investors to the wedding
celebrate
too.
with
and
you.
so they were having fun, and
that's awesome. Great. Yeah, that's awesome. How's that been now? Like, I think clearly your husband got a crash course in being like, hey, here's what it's gonna be like. But how's that managing? I know your travel schedule is also crazy, and being at home, and like, how does that work in your relationship?
Yeah, I mean, it's still very crazy, and he's so supportive and understanding of that. And I think because he's been there since the beginning too, he's sort of seen the journey.
Got it.
And I think now it's like, for him, it's just making sure that I'm also spending the time taking care of myself. Like, he really wants me to make that time. Mm-hmm. So we just try to find ways to really balance it, and it's hard. We're still trying to figure it out because every week is so different. Yeah. But yeah, it's honestly really hard.
Yeah. No, it's good. I mean, I'm glad you're being honest with it. But I'm sure at the same time there's a bunch of highs along the way too, right? Like, what's been for you personally the thing you're the most proud of?
The thing I'm most proud of is, I think, just the progress. It's hard to pick one thing. So I think I'd say the progress that we've genuinely made towards advancing the state of materials. Like, we've actually taken technology that was so early in its infancy when we started, and we've completely changed the state of what that looks like now. And we've proved that sustainable materials can actually be a part of the norm. Like, they should be a part of the norm. It should be a part of what we think of. And I think what I'm most proud of is just the resilience of our team throughout this, because it's really not easy to try to change the chemistry of a material, and like so many failures are part of that. And for the team, being able to really push forward and see that this is still a cause worth fighting for, and you have to be able to have that level of just perseverance too. Yeah,
for sure. Has there been like a good amount or a great deal of convincing that you've had to do with people or investors or even clients that this is a real option out there?
Yeah, a lot. I think initially this was very new to everyone we were talking to. And we intentionally wanted to partner with people who were legacy players. Like, they were more traditional and didn't ever consider this like alternative path. And it was because we wanted to prove that we could really change their mind. Like, changing mindsets is like the best feeling in the world. But I think the champions now that we have who've been a part of the business are the ones who initially had never ever thought that this was possible. And so, like, I'd say 90% of what I do is being able to advocate and actually showcase what the potential of what we're building is, and that vision for what we're building alongside these partners. So it's still a lot of bringing people on board.
Sure. Can you give me an example of like bringing someone on board and changing their mindset?
Yeah, I'd say that, some of those early conversations where I was saying how every manufacturer we would talk to would say no. And it was because a lot of what they've experienced was, sustainable materials, terrible performance, can't work at scale. And we had to prove to them that we could actually design something that could fit into their systems, and it could be actually a solution that they could scale. And so we ended up having to go to Asia, because a lot of the partners in Asia were seeing a lot of this firsthand. Like in those regions, you actually do see plastic pollution on every street. Like it's part of it, right? Recycling is not a thing there. And so it was almost finding the right people in the markets that actually cared about this problem and being able to solve for this problem now, and showing them that we could actually do this in a way that wasn't going to be a huge compromise for them. And so that was a lot of the shift we had to have with these partners. Yeah,
that makes sense. I think where we are generally in North America, right, it's not something that's as forward as I think it should be. I mean, of course, we talk about being eco-friendly, and of course we talk about recycling and all of that good stuff that comes with it. But being able to look down an aisle and say, like, these materials are not plastic is not something that the consumer is used to, right? I feel like the consumer isn't like thinking about that just yet, because it isn't an option that they've seen out there too, right? Do you see a world where this type of packaging, these products, will become the norm?
That's the dream. I hope. I really, really do hope for that to be the reality. And I do think that it's a necessity now. Like genuinely, if we don't try to actually make this happen, we're not going to be in a great place when it comes to just like the state of the plastic crisis, and then also the climate crisis, and also now very much on health, our health as humans, and the correlation that we're seeing with plastics actually in our bodies and what it's doing to our health. Right. Microplastics. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How has that discussion around health come into play when you're talking to investors? With investors, actually they're starting to see that as one of the main challenges as well. I mean, initially I'd say all of our investors were bought in because of the pollution side of things, and they saw the real impact of that. But now it is becoming very much around microplastics and the conversation around human health. I actually just got my microplastic blood test yesterday, so I'm going to test it out. No way. Yeah, you can test your blood and see what plastics you have. You're kidding. So I'm pretty terrified, but I'm going to do it. How do you do this? There's a lab that actually does this test. So you send your blood and you get it tested, and they show you how much plastic you have in your blood and what the plastic could be coming from. No way. So that's going to be my proof point for a lot of the conversations. Anyone who tries to deny that it's a problem, I'm going to show them my blood test. That is how I'm going to do it. That is crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. It's been wild to see the Earthos journey, because from what I've seen is like a lot of events and a lot of summits and conferences. Like, give us a perspective of like when you're there personally, what is that like for you? Are you making the right connections? Is it like a daunting experience, like being at COP, right? When and I think it was UAE, right? Yeah. What was that like? Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Like every time I'm at one of those like global forums and these big summits, I'm so grateful. I have to pinch myself sometimes, because it's like I get to be in the room and I get to be sitting in the same place as some of the biggest world leaders. You're like, okay, I can't cough right now. I can't like, do I look good? Like, that's what I would be thinking about. Yes, honestly, like 2% of me is thinking about that as well. But yeah, I think every opportunity I like really always want to maximize it like completely. And it's been so great. And honestly, a lot of those opportunities, they were always unexpected. Like they would just happen, and then we would be working for it, but then a lot of the times the best opportunities are the ones where you just happen to be in the right place at the right time. Like truly,
Right.
I believe that.
Yeah.
And I think the summits and all of those conferences are great, and I get an opportunity to actually advocate for what we do, which is really great. And they always lead to some sort of connection or conversation that's really essential. But then I also am like a big believer in just getting on a flight and like figuring it out, even if you don't necessarily have like a conference or summit or something, like being able to just go and figure it out and make the connections you need to.
Yeah.
So not just sort of waiting for those opportunities.
Yeah, I had early mentorship when I was starting my own advisory business about having a large travel budget. And at first I didn't understand it, and the mentor I was speaking to was saying that, you know, early on, even in the middle of growing your business, the in-person relationship that you'll have will lead to a lot more than a call over Zoom or a phone call. Is that like what you were referring to, like just getting on a flight? Definitely.
I think building a relationship with the people that you need to be building a relationship with can't happen over Zoom. Like you can't.
Yeah.
And I do feel like you often end up with opportunities that you don't always expect as well when you're just there, right?
Yeah.
Like when you're just in the room.
Yeah.
So I do believe that it's so important. I wish it was a bit more sustainable, which is the problem.
Yeah.
But, you know, we'll get there.
Yeah.
But yes, it's really key.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like looking back, I know, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Earthos posted a 7-year anniversary, right?
Yeah.
And seeing the like
before and after
was amazing.
Yeah.
Like it was so cool to see the transition. You know, in those 7 years, what's been like the craziest challenge? Not the wedding day, but the challenge that you've had to overcome as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it comes back to, you know, just the state of the industry right now and like mindsets and changing people's mind. It's really hard when they're not used to this and they're not necessarily always open and willing to take a chance. And I do think, you know, I could say fundraising has been the hardest part, but like everyone has those challenges with fundraising. I do think that just the industry overall has been going through so many changes where when we started, there was so much support for this transition. Like all the headlines said how single-use plastics need to be gone and we need to reduce our footprint. And then now, like 5-6 years later, no one's actually made enough progress.
Yeah.
And instead of that being this fuel to all of these corporations and governments to actually try to create further action and try to make this happen a lot quicker, it's actually just stalled a lot of this progress. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is that we can build the best technology in the world and the best materials in the world, but we can't do it alone. We actually need the entire ecosystem to want to change.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been the hardest, is just navigating this environment.
Right.
It doesn't help when climate policies around the world are also changing. So I think it's just it fuels us to keep going, but I just wish there was the same level of urgency with the rest of the world.
It's crazy because you not only have to grow, build, make sure the business is profitable, but in your world you also have to advocate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that like a big chunk of your time? I'm sure it is.
Right? Yeah, I mean, that's why we show up at the COPs and you know, these big global summits, is because we know that policy plays a really big part in all of this. And if we think of like industries that have been successful in sustainability, like the solar industry has been around forever.
Forever.
Finally, it's maybe a little bit more mainstream, but it didn't happen just overnight. It happened with incentives, with actually being able to reward that progress. Like there's a lot of support right there. And so I think it's just challenging when we're trying to move the needle, and then we also need others to really want to support that and accelerate it. And that, we have to balance kind of the market factors as well.
In the brief time that I spent in solar finance, I did see that. Like our team had to had to be there, you know, at the policy discussions at the table. And it seems like Earthos is doing a great job at that. You know, taking it back to people who are thinking about starting businesses and growing something that they're passionate about, what are the tools and resources that have been helpful for you? I know you mentioned, you know, U of T and Enactus, but what have been some really helpful resources that have helped you get off the ground? Yeah,
I mean, we owe a lot to the early accelerators and incubators that we were part of. And there were a couple that we went through, Next Canada and CDL, were really, really great for science-driven tech startups. Like that was kind of the mandate. U of T was a great place to build because it also was where I met my co-founders. And it's so funny. I remember at first I thought that I would just be building this solo. And I remember I was living with my brother at the time in the apartment, and he would come home to me and I would just be like in the kitchen, like cooking starch, like trying to cook the starch myself and trying to turn it into plastic. And I feel so bad for him now because he was like in his bachelor phase and probably just wanted to like have his apartment to himself. And I was just there like cooking the starch.
My God.
And then he was just like, what are you doing? Like, you're not a scientist.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, maybe you're right. I will go to the school I'm in and find the right people to do this.
Yeah.
And so it was just such a great place to meet the right people. And I do believe that, you know, even if you don't have the skill set in the field you're in, like just finding the right team to build it is so important.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are the next 5 years look like for Earthos?
So we're in the middle of a pretty big pivot.
Really?
Yeah. And it's been really, really amazing to kind of see this shift and just the response we're getting from our industry on it. But we're trying to make sure that we can actually embed ourselves into the supply chains of some of the brands we work with in a much more meaningful way. So instead of us actually building these materials and then supplying them to our partners, we want our partners to actually be a part of building these materials and scaling them a lot more effectively in their own supply chains. So we've been actually digitizing a lot of the tools and the insights and the knowledge that we've been actually collecting over the years.
Right.
And we've been working on building out a platform that helps our brands do this as well. So I think that's where our future is headed. We're excited we just secured a partner for this. But
amazing.
I think we're going to continue to fight the fight. And
that's amazing.
It'll be exciting.
It will be. And I got one last question for you. Taking you back to your days at U of T when you were debating going down the path of the world of accounting or building something which ended up leading to Earthos. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to find ways to really enjoy the journey. Like, I think when you start a company so young, you are also growing up while you're building a company. Yeah. Like, I was growing up at the same time. Yeah. And it can be really incredible to attach yourself to such a big purpose so early, but it can feel very overwhelming very quickly. And so I think what I would tell myself is just to enjoy the journey, learn from everything, but, you know, also don't forget that you have an identity outside of Earthos, and this purpose is big, and it's such a privilege to be doing what I'm doing. Yeah. But, you know, these are core years of your life, and you have to find ways to also continue to grow and learn from that.
Yeah, I love it. Nuha, thank you so much for being on Behind the Business and sharing your insights. Like I said, I was really excited to speak with you because I think what you're doing is great. What Earthos is doing is phenomenal. There's an amazing purpose behind it. And I wish you guys nothing but the best.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you to everyone who's joined on Behind the Business on this episode. My name is Fahim Sabja.
I'm Nuha.
And we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Business. Thanks for tuning in on this episode of Behind the Business. If you enjoyed it, do me a favor, share it with someone who's on their own entrepreneurial journey or thinking about starting one. Also, follow, subscribe, and leave a review whenever you listen. Lastly, keep up with us on Instagram at behindthebiz_pod. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep building, and keep listening. This is Fahim Sabja signing off from Behind the Business.